Welcome to Breaking the Cycle, Redefining Recovery for IPV Survivors podcast. I am Elena Moore, a senior at UC Berkeley School of Social Welfare and a survivor. I spent 15 years in an abusive relationship that nearly destroyed me. I left at 89 pounds, ashamed, broken, and convinced I had no future. I share this because survivors are not just subjects of research. We are experts. We know what works and what does not because we have lived it. Domestic violence affects more than 61 million women in the United States. Yet our response system stops at crisis intervention, leaving survivors to navigate recovery largely on their own. Today, we will examine why that model is failing, what the research tells us survivors need, and what better systems can look like. Now we're going to talk about the problem with crisis-only interventions. Emergency shelter saves lives. That is not in question. But saving someone from immediate danger is not the same as helping them build a life. Shelters typically offer 30 to 90 days of housing, focused safety planning, and basic resources. What they do not offer is time and sustained support that genuine recovery requires. Research tells us survivors leave their abusive partners an average of 7 times before permanently separating. That pattern is not about weakness. It reflects what happens when someone exits a crisis shelter without stable housing, income, therapy, or community, and faces choices between homelessness and going back. Financial abuse leaves survivors without credit, employment history, or savings. Trauma leaves them without the psychological foundation to navigate complex systems alone. Isolation leaves them without anyone to call. Crisis intervention addresses none of these things, and until our systems do, the cycle continues. Now we're going to talk about understanding recovery, theory, and evidence. Judith Herman's foundational work on trauma recovery gives us a framework for understanding what survivors actually need. She identified 3 stages of healing. The first stage is establishing safety. The second stage is remembrance and mourning. And the third stage is reconnection with ordinary life. Each stage builds on the one before it, and none of them can be rushed. Establishing safety means more than physical removal from danger. It means stable housing, financial independence, and the kind of predictability daily routine that abuse systematically destroys. When survivors are still scrambling for a roof over their heads, they cannot begin processing their trauma. And without processing their trauma, genuine reconnection, rebuilding identity, relationships, and purpose remains out of reach. Transitional housing programs that provide 12 to 24 months of stable support create the conditions Herman describes. The research consistently shows that survivors in these programs achieve greater housing stability, higher employment rates, and significantly better health outcomes than those who receive only emergency shelter. One program that brings Herman's framework to life is the Greenhouse17 in Kentucky, directed by Diane Fleet. In the clip you're about to hear, Fleet describes how working with nature gives survivors something a traditional shelter cannot, which is a lived experience of growth, capability, and belonging.
They loved it. They were like, this is great. I'm getting out of the shelter. It's, I'm being successful in something. It's, I'm learning something. I'm proud of myself. It's, the nature aspect, the healing aspect was sort of trickling in.
What Fleet is describing is not a gardening program. It is a structured opportunity for survivors to experience themselves as capable and connected to something larger than their trauma. I am now joined by a survivor who has agreed to share her experience. Let's welcome Brittney to Breaking the Cycle podcast. Welcome, Brittney. Hi. So, Brittney, when you first realized you needed to leave your abusive relationship, where did your mind go?
How am I going to do this? Where am I going to go? My family did not live in the state that I was currently living in, so I knew I was kind of on my own. And anybody that's been in that situation, even though you don't want to be with that abuser, so many people stay, and I did for 5 years longer than I should have, because that was better than being alone. I think so many people, myself included, are so scared to be alone because you don't know what that looks like. So just like, how am I going to do this? And then I had to be brave enough to share my story, to ask for help, which is also just a very vulnerable place that people don't like to be in.
Very true. What was it like for you to try to find stable housing?
Impossible. I slept on many friends' couches. I ended back up with him for a little bit while I was waiting for my aunt to clean out a spare bedroom in her house. And I know that my situation is very different than others, but my parents do very well for themselves. And my mom knew that I was in a abusive, toxic relationship, got many phone calls from police. I had been arrested, even though nothing was my fault. It takes two to tango. I was still guilty. I was a hairstylist. And so I think when you're 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, you're just surviving, like showing up to work hungover and drinking and surrounding yourself in the chaos. So you just keep going. You don't really know that you're surviving and not thriving until you remove yourself from the situation. So now when I look back, I'm like, how did I work hungover? How did I do hair for 10 hours? I was always employed, so like money wasn't an issue, but I do remember moving into my house and my mattress was on the floor, and like I had bought broken chairs off of Marketplace. I didn't have a kitchen table. Like I literally had makeup to get ready for work, my clothes, toiletries, and a mattress on the floor. Now my house is fully furnished, but you just take handouts. You just take whatever anyone will give you, and you just come from a very broken place, and you just have to let people see you be extremely raw and vulnerable. Like I was taking anything anyone would give me for free. So my thoughts didn't like echo in this huge empty house that I was now in safe by myself. Like, I don't know if that was better. At the time, I didn't know. Now, obviously, I know it was. But I think it's just hard to sit alone with your own thoughts.
Yes. If you were sitting here talking to a survivor now, please let them know what it's like once you're out of the relationship and where you're at now in life.
Oh my gosh. I would just say it's 1,000% worth it. Like I out of it and not wearing it as a badge of honor, but just being so incredibly proud of yourself to like fight for your life and to fight for having a beautiful, powerful, and worth it. You just like have to do it scared.
Well, thank you for your time.
What Brittney is describing reflects what research consistently documents. Survivors face housing instability, financial devastation, psychological trauma, as well as social isolation all at once. And each barrier makes the others harder to overcome. Returning to the abuser is not a failure of willpower. It is often the only option a broken system has left available.
I had the privilege of speaking with Diane Fleet at Greenhouse17 and Erica Gomez at La Clinica, two practitioners who are building exactly that. What both programs understand is that trust cannot be forced and recovery cannot be rushed. Survivors need time, stability, and freedom to direct their own healing. That requires funding streams that measure long-term outcomes rather than bed counts, cross-sector coordination so survivors are not navigating 20 separate systems alone. Now we're going to talk about community-based solutions and a path forward. Crisis intervention saves lives in the moment, but it was never designed to rebuild them. Real recovery takes time, community, economic stability, and a therapeutic support that extends well beyond 30 days. We have the evidence, we have the models. What remains is the will to invest in survivors, not just now, but through the full arc of healing. If you or someone you know needs support, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Again, that number is 1-800-799-7233.